What is life? Why am I here? How is it all connected? And how am I going to navigate this beautiful but crazy journey? I'm Sylvia and welcome to the Soul Sunshine podcast. Today I'm talking to Libby Babet. When Libby was diagnosed with malignant hypertension in her early 20s with blood pressure more than twice safe levels, she was told she'd be on medication for life and probably never have children. Healing herself through the right kinds of exercise and nutrition and getting off medication was the start of her lifelong mission to inspire others to move more, eat better, and live life to the full. A decade later, her knowledge and passion led her a starring role as the new trainer on Channel 10's reimagination and relaunch of The Biggest Loser Transformed. As a former journalist, she writes for publications such as Prevention magazine and has also been the fitness expert for Women's Fitness magazine and the Hit Network, Australia's largest radio network. Outside of her work in media, Libby is the founder and co-founder of multiple businesses, including her Bondi training studio, The Upbeat, sustainable activewear brand Athletica, healthy snacks brand Chief Nutrition, and Nurture 360 business retreats. She is also a best-selling author of Totally Buff and a sought-after speaker and presenter. Libby is a fitness guru, an entrepreneur, an author, a writer, a speaker, and best of all, a mom to two beautiful little children. And I am so grateful and excited to finally have her here with me today.
Wow.
Welcome to the Soul Sunshine podcast.
Thank you. We have tried so hard to get here, and I'm thrilled to finally be in the seat. And what an intro! I have to live up to that name now.
I love it because, like you said, we've been talking about this for literally over a year now.
I know.
We make it happen. We make it happen.
Yeah, and we probably mentioned it even before that when we'd run into each other at our kids' daycare. So yeah, it's been a long time coming, and I'm excited.
I know. Finally, we've made it. So, Libby, before we're heading into our conversation, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So today we're talking about Libby's story. We're talking about her health struggles with a health diagnosis and how a diagnosis of, never going to be able to have kids made her go on a mission to do anything and everything to heal herself. We're also talking about how she stayed positive during this time in her life, what kept her motivated, and how she now has two beautiful little kids. We are also talking about her journey as an entrepreneur, which is so inspiring in the fitness world, and how she's running multiple businesses while keeping a balance both for herself and her family. Libby, before we go in, I always go like, how did we meet? How do we know each other? And we've known each other for years because our babies, back then
they were tiny.
They went to daycare together. And
yes.
Oh my God, I actually have to show you. I prepared this before you arrived.
Yeah,
but check out what I found.
Oh my goodness.
So this is a photo of
Izzy,
Libby's older daughter, and Rafa, my little boy, together at daycare, and they're tiny. They must have been like 2 years old or something.
Yeah, 2 probably. Because Izzy moved on from, I think, that place when she was about 2.5, so probably about 2.
Yeah, I know.
So cute. And there's little Noah, who's still her best friend in the yellow.
Little Noah's on there. Oh my God,
so cute. And Tamika, funnily enough, Noah's mum still works for me.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I saw her the other day at your event, so that's always really nice, running into the old daycare crew as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So Libby, on your website, and I'm going to read that from your website because that really is something that stood out to me,
Sure.
You said that you were put on this planet to help people be happy, feel good about themselves, and live life to the full. And I really, really loved that. And I have to tell you a little story about, ever since we know you, George, my husband, he calls you Bouncy Libby because he's like, Libby is always so happy and so bouncy. I've never seen her not with a smile on her face.
That's so funny.
And when I read that quote from you on your website, I was like, oh my God, that is literally encapsulating who you are as a person when we run into you. So I really love that. But what I'm really interested in is where did this come from? Was that always something that you felt, or was there a point in your life where you kind of made that your mission to be, that person, that role model to the outside world?
You know what? I have always had a fair bit of energy. My poor parents. I was always that kid that was like, one thing that sums me up is I always say I would love to be a vampire just so I could have all these hundreds of years and be every career. Like I'm really interested in a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I've always been like that. You know, my parents were always saying, Libby, just choose one thing. And now I feel like I have found my thing. You know, if you think about my businesses, there's a fitness studio that really merges fitness, dance, music. It's very, it's called The Upbeat, literally.
Uplifting,
And then we've got, you know, Athletica, which is a sustainable activewear line, an extension of that, and Chief, which is healthier snacks. So it's an extension of that. Realistically, they all are just extensions of me and I guess the person that I have become. You know, of course, you're not rosy bouncy all the time, but I feel like my general competence is coming back to very quickly to, it's all good, let's go.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess I have always had that energy. But really, you know, I started out my career as a journalist, obviously. I'd done media recruitment. I've always been interested in people and how they work and how they think and what their struggles are. And I've had that big sister energy, you know, of like, how can I help? And, you know, what can we do? And it's going to be okay. So that's always been me. But as you mentioned, I did in my, you know, quite early on in my life, just before my mid-20s really, around probably 24-ish, I guess, 24-ish. I basically was overseas in London at the end of my 23rd year. And it was almost within a day, I went from perfect health to terrible health. So I caught a virus, and I'm not sure if this is what brought it on, changed my anatomy, but somehow one day I was fine with a bit of a cold, and the next day all of a sudden I had these, what I can only explain as like migraines, mega migraines that made me feel extremely nauseous. They were there almost all day for no reason. If I had a sip of coffee.
For a prolonged period of time.
Yeah, began one day. I literally remember the switch one day to the next. And I continued traveling for a number of months, but I just was getting, I felt like I was getting more and more unwell. Like I had this, you know, these huge migraines, this nausea. I would go to work, and if I had at any point to have a conversation that was, you know, serious or needed me to present to someone, I would get red, my teeth would start chattering, I'd feel like I was going to throw up. So these weird symptoms that had never been like me in the past. I came home thinking I need to just get home. I did get a checkup, but I was so young, no one even thought to take my blood pressure. And 6 months later, I was still dealing with all these symptoms. I was such a recluse. Like, I couldn't drink coffee. I couldn't go out with my friends. I'd come home from work and just be in a dark room. I was throwing up in the bathrooms at work from just this, like, you know, bizarre migraines. Really? And it was only one day when I went to donate blood that I went, and I'm an O negative blood type, so I try and do that regularly. Sat down to donate, and the lady just said, this is interesting, the machine must be broken.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, okay. And then she went to get another one, brought it back, and just said, okay, darling, I think you need to sit still. I think I need to call an ambulance. At which point, of course, blood pressure rose even further. My teeth started chattering. I was bright red. I started sweating. And I said to her, what's wrong, you know? And she said, your blood pressure. At that point, I think it was like 250 on 150. Oh,
wow.
So regular,
what's the normal range? The normal range is like 150.
It's 120 on 80 is normal. Yeah. And, you know, for someone young and fairly fit like me, it probably should have been more like 120 on 70. So, you know, high blood pressure, to give you an idea, is once it's creeping up over 140 on 90. So once you get past 150, usually it's like, whoa. And mine was mega high. So I kind of said to her, look, pause, I'm young. Don't know if I've even got ambulance cover. I'm going to take myself to the hospital. I think this has been going on for a while. And I had this crazy hypertension, and it turns out like my heart was kind of, at the time, like they said it was starting to really be under pressure, kind of almost enlarging, which is why they called it malignant. And went through all these tests to find out what was wrong, and they could not get to the heart of it, which is quite unusual for someone quite young.
Yeah. So they had no idea where it came from?
No idea. My feels are that it came from whatever virus I had at the time in the UK. And I don't know if that's true, but all I can say is I was completely healthy. I got this like virus with a bit of a fever and a cold, and then 2 days into it, this happened and I never looked back. So I don't know if it was some change there or it was just something my body was struggling with.
But at least that's when it started, right?
Yeah.
That's what you can put back.
But I also can say that I'm someone who's extremely sensitive. So if we look at 43-year-old Libby now, I don't and cannot drink alcohol at all, or my blood pressure will rise up again. I can't drink coffee shop coffee. Like I can make it at home really weak, you know, and I can have a little bit, but I can't really do that. I in the very few times as a young person I'm out experimenting and someone would give me a little bit of pot or something, I would have a wild reaction. So I'm a very sensitive body.
Yeah.
And I was also in the UK. I stopped drinking when I was 18 because I had a drink and just was like, no, just felt all wrong. And so I was probably having a few drinks for the first time. You know, I was out late, probably not sleeping well, eating crappy UK food like hot chips and packaged food because I was broke, you know. So
it's the typical thing that you do at that age, right? You go out, you experiment, you don't cook your own food, you just
right. It's like baked beans and fried chips and that's about it.
I
and
still
beers.
can't do baked beans.
I know, my goodness. So I probably also wasn't looking after my body, and I know now that my body is sensitive. So, you know, to this day, I did get all of that blood pressure under control after many years of medication.
Yeah.
I had to use medication. I was so far gone. So I had a huge amount of medication, like a little old nana. But with that medication, I couldn't fall pregnant on it. You know, my body was so inflamed at the time. They were like, it's dangerous to have a pregnancy, so you'll just have to give up that kind of dream, or you'll have to go be extremely closely monitored and come off the medication, but we're worried.
Yeah, because I was going to say, what did they say to you, how that's going to that's going to affect your life, and if it was curable or if you would have to live with that for the rest of your life? What was the general consent at that point?
Because they tested everything, they couldn't find a source. They just said, this must be genetic and you're going to have to live on this medication. Yeah. But the medication was also horrible. Like it broke out my skin, and I was just a lot more anxious than I used to be, and a bit more bloated, and it wasn't nice. But I was on it for a number of years. So I can't even remember how many years now, but that was sort of 24-ish, I got the diagnosis, and I probably came off it. I started to try coming off at about 27, 28, but it wasn't until around 30, 31 that I was actually able to get rid of it completely.
So when you got rid of it, was there other things that you replaced with the medication, or did you just go like, I've just had enough, I just need to get off it?
Well, it took me many years and I had to wean off it, but I know this is not everyone. And you talked to me about human design, and I have discovered that I am this kind of like manifesting generator type, which means I pretty much, if I set my mind to something, I can do it. You know, I'm going to make it happen. And so for me, I was like, right, whatever I need to do, I'm going to do it. And that for me is not a difficult thing. I need to stop drinking, I'll stop drinking. I need to stop coffee, I'll stop coffee. I can't have that food, I won't have it. That for me is like just a mental process that is fairly simple for me. And I realize that's not everyone. But I was immediately like, let me look into all the things I need to do. So I went and I shadowed naturopaths. I shadowed nutritionists. I interviewed a whole bunch of them because I was also a journalist. You know, I wrote about it. I explored it. I picked apart everything. I went to see integrative doctors. And you know, because there was no key source and no one could really find why this was happening, they all said to me, look, you've got to go back to square one. Take out anything food-wise, drinks-wise that could be affecting you. Go back to a place of really neutral, like plant-based foods, clean animal protein, and, you know, just help your body to anti-inflame. So, you know, that was cutting out the alcohol and the coffee and any processed foods, any fried foods, So I went completely like to level 10, and then I slowly brought myself back to level 5 once I'd kind of got rid of that blood pressure. But I really went hard, and it wasn't a place of deprivation. I was eating a lot because I was also trying to get fit again, but it really kicked off my whole life journey. So I started with the food. I couldn't exercise at first because my blood pressure would start to go up, and it was a scary place. So I cut out the food, I just walked for my exercise, and slowly I kind of started to build back up again. Now, funnily enough, when I went back into wanting to go into full-on exercise, where I landed was, it was very hardcore at the time. There wasn't Pilates and not much yoga.
What, 10, are we talking 10 years ago, approximately 10 years ago?
15.
15, okay.
I know. There was like hardcore run groups, hardcore lifting, hardcore boxing, and marathon runners. So that was where my first business evolved. I kind of thought, I'm going to become a PT and I'm going to create something that's fun, that's welcoming, that's not too intense, that helps get women strong and fit. And that was when my first business, Buff Girls, was born, which was at the time so cute. I was so young. It was Beautiful, Unstoppable, Fearless Girls. And it was these young women that might be scared of exercise otherwise. And that's where we began. So that started my journey to like really fun, functional, celebratory fitness. I've never done a before and after photo of any of my clients in 15 years. It was all just about that movement. At the time, it was outdoors, it was fun. And I was eating, you know, everything that was like, I could either if I went back to hunter-gatherer days, I could catch or I could grow, if that makes sense. That was where I began. And slowly, it took me so many years. Yeah. But slowly I got off the medication. Probably took me like 4 or 5 years to do that part. And then it was like, okay, I'd met the love of my life in that time. I'd got married. We wanted to have kids. But what happened with all that stressful high blood pressure was my cycle had disappeared. So I had over a decade of no cycle before I had my kids. And then, of course, I'd got into fitness where we start early. There's a lot of physical activity. And so I again had to reassess, okay, I've got the blood pressure down now. I've got the good exercise component, but how do I make sure my body's not overdoing it? Pulling back on the high intensity strength and low impact cardio and eating more of the good stuff and starting to, fill my body up like that. So making sure I was eating well more than enough. And I did see naturopaths, got on the herbs. I don't know whether that actually did anything.
Everything.
I just tried everything. But really it just took time, I think, for my body to feel it was safe again. Yeah. So I got my first cycle back when I was like, it was just over 10 years after the diagnosis. I would have been like just about, let me think. So when did I feel pregnant with Izzy? I had her when I was almost 37. So almost 36. So I would have been 35, almost 36 when I had my first cycle.
Yeah, wow. So what was it for you back then in the first place when they told you, you might not ever be able to have children? Like, how did that feel for you in that moment? I mean, you were still in your 20s, you were still young, but did you always have that wish to become a mom and, to have children?
I always wanted to be a mom, I mean, I have 2 little sisters and my favourite part of my life to that point was being a big sister. Like, I loved it. And now I had this environment of hundreds of caring women at the time that I just loved nurturing, and I always knew that I wanted to be a mum, you know. To be honest, just before we finally got there, we'd had to have the conversation of maybe it's not going to happen and maybe we need to be okay with just supporting others. But towards the end of this whole journey, I really did stumble across a few really basic things that I kind of needed to shift to really push my hormones over the edge. And so I thought, let's give this one more crack, So little things like making sure that if I was going to have anything with caffeine in it, that I wasn't doing that until after I'd had a really good meal later in the morning. That if I was going to get up and go out early to train people and train myself, that I hadn't had enough of a protein and carb snack to make my body feel like it's okay, we're safe, we're good. Things like, having a little bit of dessert after dinner to tell my body there's a bit of extra in the tank here. We're not having these big gaps between eating, making sure I was not eating on the go as I tend to do because I'm energetic, and sitting down and being present with my food, and taking those times to log off and get proper sleep, like extending my sleep window to being in bed for 8 hours. Because I am someone who can get away with 6 hours sleep and move on, But I had to really go, okay, if Mother Nature was going to choose someone to have a baby, who's she going to choose?
Yes.
And do all that.
I mean, you do want to give yourself the best possible chance, right? It's like you want to try it all. And even if it sounds weird or like out there, you go like, well, I'm going to try it because, it might be the thing that, makes the difference in the end. I mean, all those things would accumulate together and kind of make it up. But, maybe it's the missing, the missing piece.
And so, I had felt at the time when they told me I couldn't have kids, like, this is a horrible thing to say and to feel. And I don't, I actually think by the time I'd come to terms with possibly not having kids, I'd turn this around. But at the time I felt like, what's the use if I can't even do what a woman's here to do? And that's such a silly train of thought because, now as I've become a little older, I've got the most amazing friends who contribute so incredibly to the lives all around them and have the most wonderful lives themselves, who will never have kids and don't even want to. And I think that life would have been amazing for me too. But at the time I was young, I just found the love of my life. I knew he wanted to have kids.
Plus you wanted to have them. I think it's very different if you want to have them or if you don't want to have them. Because if you don't want to have them in the first place, you're like, okay, well, that's fine. But if you want to have them, you probably start questioning your body and yourself in ways that is not right. We know that, but that just automatically happens.
100%. And like sometimes, I really was like, and I was apologizing to my husband, who was so beautiful the whole time. Like he was like, you are enough, and this is enough. This life together is enough, you know. And we had these beautiful businesses. We were giving back. It was still a great life. So
I'll have to ask you a question there. Do you feel like, because you said you had to have that conversation, you had to have the conversation, what if it doesn't happen for us, and are we going to be okay with that? do you think consciously taking that pressure off yourselves almost like then enables you to have the babies, because you suddenly go because you hear that so many times,
times.
Women who go through rounds and rounds of IVF or have tried for years to have kids, and then suddenly they go you know what, it's just not happening, I'm okay with it now, whatever it may be, I relax. And then as soon as they say that, there's a woman in my hometown back in Austria, and she adopted 2 little boys, twins, because she couldn't have kids, and as soon as she had adopted those kids, she got pregnant. She adopted one child, and then she had twins. I think that's how it happened. But so it's almost your body relaxes, your mind relaxes, you're just finally kind of letting go from something that you're so desperately clinging on to. And then what's meant for you is actually coming through.
100%. I think there's an element of that. And you know what? I also have I'm not necessarily a religious person, all that jazz, but I do have a spiritual element to me. And this is something that I, who knows if this had an impact or not, but in my brain I was so basically exactly a month before I got my first period back after all these years, I'd been doing all the right things, maybe it was just the right time, but I had one of my cousins that I was super close to growing up. She was about to have her 30th birthday and she was epileptic. So she had a huge grand mal seizure. And that wasn't the problem, but nobody was home when she had it. She was over internationally and she fell onto a plastic bag and she suffocated and she died.
No.
So it was so sad, and she was so young and amazing and quirky and fabulous and just living her best life in London. And, it was so funny because exactly, I'm talking exactly a month from that day, I got my first cycle. And I just had this I also had this little moment where I was I've done all the right things, I've put my body in the right place, but did you just give it a little nudge? And exactly, so it was so funny because I got that cycle back, and it was not it was a full cycle. I was whoa, that was a lot. I was back. And the next month, I remember saying to just my cousin passed away, I've done this. I sold one of my other fitness businesses at the time. I had another gym called Agoja. I just sold the gym as well. And I was I want to go on a holiday. We went on this big holiday to Hawaii for a month. I was we just need to leave everything behind for a minute. And over there, I was expecting that second period and it never came. And I remember going, I'm kind of sad. I thought this was maybe my chance again, but maybe it was just random. But actually, I'd conceived.
That's amazing.
So
literally on your first period?
My first, this would have been the second one.
But
I'd had one in 10 years. And I remember coming back and finding out I was pregnant and just being shocked, but the whole pregnancy thinking, this can't go ahead. Surely my body's going to reject this baby because surely it's not plushing there. Surely I haven't got all the hormones back yet. Surely.
Yeah.
But I was pregnant with Izzy, and, the amazing thing about her, and she's just such a special soul to me. In the month before she was born, I didn't know if she was a boy or a girl, but I started having these dreams for a whole month before she was born. And she was this bald-headed little girl with deep brown eyes in my dreams that talked early, crawled early, walked early, and told me I'm here for you, I'm here for you, I'm here for you, and, we're going to do this together. And it was so bizarre because in these whole dreams, as that month went on, as we got closer to the birth, she grew this curly blonde hair. She grew up, and
wow.
I can't even tell you. I can still see those dreams now.
So the dreams actually
they
evolved.
came
it
true.
Wasn't always the same dream.
She kind of grew through the dreams and so quickly. Everyone was why is this girl developing so quickly? And it's so funny because as she came out, she was bald for almost 2 years. As dead bald. She had these almost 2 months after she was born, they all start with blue eyes.
Yeah.
Her eyes went this deep dark brown, and her and I just have this connection. It's Justin's mum, Jennifer's always saying you guys are so you don't even notice it, but you'll just move in the room till you're touching each other accidentally, or you'll be talking to someone and you'll just look at each other, and we've always been like that.
Soulmates.
It's just a beautiful, deep little connection.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So
she's such a gorgeous girl. Oh my God, she's so
beautiful.
cute.
And all the things she was crawling before 5 months. This kid, she was sitting up at 4 months totally straight. She also had wild vomits for a whole first year, which was crazy and a whole nother story of strength. But she walked at 9 months completely by herself, which I didn't realize was so unusual till I had then Harry. It was a totally different situation. But all the things in those dreams were like, in her dream, she was like, I'm coming, I'm growing up fast, I'm kind of going to be there for you. Like, it was just this wild thing.
And is that how she shows up with you as well?
100%. So I still remember when I had Harry, who was another wild moment for me, because after Izzy, I had 2.5 years no cycle again. And
so it dropped again.
and and in that time after birth, as you do, I was like, I started to have the odd red wine, the odd coffee, because I was a tired mum, and it just didn't come back. And I was like, I need to get rid of all that again, and I need to make sure that I'm on the straight and narrow. If that would be like, for me, 1 or 2 coffees a week, 1 or 2 wine, like it just is enough for my body,
No, I know what you mean. 'Cause I have a very sensitive body myself, and I can't take a lot of things that overstimulate me.
That's it. And like lack of sleep as a new mum, obviously. And with Harry, it was the same thing. I got my cycle back once, and the second one I was pregnant with him. It's just wild to me. But I remember when he was a little tiny baby, we'd be in the room and he'd be screaming the house down as babies do. And she, at 3, like early 3s, would be drawing me these beautiful pictures of me and her holding hands and all these love hearts together. And she'd come in the late night, she'd come and she'd slide it under the door, and I'd just be there, pen, I'd see these little notes under the door, like, this is what she's like to this day,
That is so cute.
I'll say
so gorgeous.
She's just lovely, and always thinking of me. And to this day, I have this like container this deep of all her little love notes and messages to me. And it's just,
she must be an old soul.
She's an old soul completely. From when she was 3, and every year different teachers, anything on her report card is Izzy's a little philosopher. Like, it's just... So for me, it was like she was meant to be. She waited a long time to get to me. My cousin bumped her in. We were in this place in Hawaii where I always had this feeling I would conceive, and I can't explain it to you. When Justin was 40... we were supposed to go for his 40th, and I was so excited, thinking miraculous, even though I didn't have a cycle, we were going to get pregnant. And, because he's 6 years older than me, and it took me another 5 years after that to get my cycle. But funnily enough, that was the place we ended conceiving. It was Izzy who was speaking to me well beforehand, in this majestic place. It's just like a lovely story, but I waited so long for it. And I think this is my thing. I couldn't do IVF because of the blood pressure history. Even recently, like after Harry, after Izzy, I've had this under control for so many years. And 2024, I really leveled up in the business stakes. I took on a lot of extra stuff. I started having coffee shop coffees again. On a Friday night, I might come home and have a glass of wine. Nothing major, 1 drink, whatever it might be. And all of a sudden I was like, why do I feel like I'm starting to get these headaches again? Put it on, and immediately was already up at 150 over 110 again. And I was like, oh my gosh. But 1 month in, it was all under control, because I was like, right, bedtime, never any alcohol, no coffee. Like, I just can't. I have to be completely good forever.
It's so funny when you talk about that, because I'm like I said, I'm exactly like you. Like, my body is super sensitive. And I didn't drink coffee for almost 10 years. And now I've kind of reintroduced it, because I ended up buying a coffee machine for George, and then I ended up drinking more coffee again. But same with alcohol. I don't really drink alcohol anymore. I've stopped that as well. And it's like every now and then you have this I'm feeling so good and life's good and everything's good.
Have a glass of wine.
I can have a coffee here or this there, and then you do too much of it, or too many times in a row, and then your body straight away goes nah, not good, and then you have to. I'm the same. My body just kind of tells me it's okay, off it again, no coffee this week, or whatever it is, So it's really, it's a really beautiful thing as well, right? When your body is so sensitive, because it actually tells you what's wrong and it tells you what you need to look after.
And I think this is the thing that I think, unless you do have such a sensitive whatever, that people maybe don't understand how deeply all these things do affect us.
And how they're connected.
The uppers, the downers. The other thing that I have to completely cut out, and this could have been more so than even the coffee, having a few coffees, is for me, it's ultra processed foods, which was the original reason we created Chief Bar, which is my healthy snack company, because I couldn't find anything I could just chuck in my bag that didn't have preservatives, additives, added salts. And this was the thing that I probably, if I look at the picture, it probably wasn't the odd glass of wine and the odd bit of caffeine that was the problem. It was also we're on the rush and we have a few snacks we shouldn't have. Things that are just in that too processed section. And so for me, it has been a blessing. And I think that was my final lesson. I'm never drinking again. I'm not doing coffee shop coffees again, and I don't eat ultra processed foods. And it was a reminder to me not to you know, not to obsess about it, but not to allow that to be just, here's processed snacks for my kids all the time too.
Not to get carried away.
Because, you know, if it's sensitive to me, they're so tiny.
Yeah, totally.
And
so it's always like it's a blessing in disguise, right? Where you go like, well, it is kind of annoying sometimes, but it's like ultimately it's good for you and for your body and for your health, you know?
That's right. And it's one of those things like, you know, it's really true, and it's something I always believe in. Like we've got this one vehicle that carries us through life, and it's always just that reminder of like, you know, treat it well, because you don't want to be driving around in a beat up old car. You know, you want your health span to be as much as possible. And I think that's why all my businesses have become such extensions of me, like fitness that's fun and that's, you know, what makes people want to be consistent with it because it's a great time. And so the women come back and they feel safe. And it is only female for a reason. I get questioned on why there's no men in there all the time, but a lot of women don't feel safe in an environment with men when they're wearing their activewear and whatever else. And so it is a completely easy, no stress, fun environment for women.
Safe,
That's
nurturing space.
Nurturing space, and women who are orthodox or whatever they are can come in and they can train too, you know. Food that kind of feeds people well, and an activewear that's better for the earth and ultimately makes you feel amazing. So it's all an extension of me, which circles it all right back. And they're all passion businesses, which I think is where I find the balance in it all, you know, because it is really hard running businesses. You've got to be built to completely absorb shock, heartache, scary moments, financial distress, you know, staff and their personal issues all the time. Like I am absorbing all the time, and you have to be able to take that, swallow it, and step forward with good energy and good attitude, because you're the leader.
So how do you do that? How do you manage that on a day-to-day basis? Because it's a lot, you know, like it's a lot. And like you said, you're like having a very sensitive body, like physically also probably means you're like emotionally quite sensitive, you know, and you're feeling those emotions from other people, and you're feeling 100%. That stress. So,
and I do. One of my things that my husband always says to me is like, Libby, you feel things like, you know, someone's car's broken down and all of a sudden you feel like it's your car that's broken down. Like I take it completely on, which does, you know, in many ways, it makes me a great person to work for, because I will always understand. You know, I will always understand that your kid's sick, and I'm not going to be like, that's annoying. I'm going to be like, I'm so sorry for you. And of course I'll find a way to make that work. You know, there's all of that.
It's interesting because you did share your human design. You did share your birthday with me, and we talked about
you did it. Okay, what am I actually?
Well, first of all, you're actually not a manifesting generator.
Oh my God, okay, give me.
You're a generator.
But I tried to do it online and I got... Maybe I got just generator. Maybe I just got generator and I assumed it was the same.
You're generator. So you're really here to do the things that give you joy, you know? And the more things that you do that give you joy, the more magnetic you become in the world, and the more opportunities are coming towards you, and the more people are resonating with you. And that really speaks for itself when you talk about your businesses and the love of what you're doing and how you're doing it, right? But then the emotional thing is interesting, because you said you feel for other people so much. You have an undefined emotional center, but what that means is that you feel the emotions around you even more. You take them in, and it's like you're amplifying them out into the world. So you're even feeling them more than the people that, like you're feeling worse for the person that
so
whose
makes
car
sense.
is broken down than the person whose car is broken down is feeling, you know, if that makes sense.
That is exactly true.
So,
and you know, in many ways, I feel like this is why I have always loved training, because what I love, I remember going to see someone when I was doing a keynote to talk about like how I can structure it. And it was interesting because he was like, right, you're a personal trainer. If I look at the personal training industry, most of it is nothing like me. You know, I'm very much less a trainer and more an energetic manipulator, you know, and in a positive way. Like an energetic generator, that's right, exactly. Like in a room of 20 women, my core life skill is I will immediately see which two are sad today, which two have had a rough morning, which two are a bit tired, which two are on a high, which one is not going to say anything but probably needs some love, you know. And I will work, instead of working to the room, I will work to each of those pain points.
That's so beautiful.
Which is why I love training.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for people to understand how I've been a trainer for so long and how much I love it. But they ask me for a fitness program, and there's nothing I'd like to do less than give them a fitness program.
Yeah.
You know, our programming is specifically done to get it's scientific, but it's also done to create a joyful outcome.
Yeah.
And it's a place of escape, and that's what I love. And it's funny you say that, because to me, when you put me in a room doing something that I'm not interested in, I'm not going to do it well. And if it's something that I am enjoying and gives me joy, I'll do it 20 times better than anyone else.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how hard it is.
And isn't it funny, because I'm a generator as well, and I always thought that's just normal. It's like, of course you don't like doing the things you don't like doing and you love doing. But it's exactly that. It's like I'm sitting there going like, oh my God, I'm doing the worst job. But it's because it's literally sucking the soul out of me, right? And then if you do something that you love, people go like, how do you do that? How do you do all of that? And it gives you even more energy the more you do it, right?
No, it does. Like I've been a trainer now for about 16 years. And so that's 16 years of my alarm clock being 4:15 a.m.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, how do you do that? I'm like, because I actually genuinely enjoy being that first touch point in a day. Like I'm the best 6 a.m. trainer you can find, because I am always... I'm there for you. Like I'm ready. I'm ready to give you a great experience. I'm ready to lift the room. I'm ready to set you on your way. And it's not because I love being on stage or I love giving a great fitness session, although I do that. I love setting people up. You know, I love making them feel like they can be stronger, they can be more confident. We all laugh that I give Libby sermons at the end of each class, and I do, but I love it. You know?
Give what, Libby?
I give sermons. Like I give like a little
sermon?
like you're a
like an
priest.
affirmation.
Like you're a priest at a church, and you're kind of giving someone like something to leave with, you know?
I love it. But I was thinking more when you were talking about it, it's almost like fitness and therapy at the same time. Because even
100%.
though you're not like literally having a therapy session, it is like, you're kind of guiding to each person what they need, and you know they can kind of come in, obviously get their endorphins up doing the exercise, and then leave, you know, being set up really well for the day.
It's funny because the biggest comment we get online is like, this is better than therapy, but it's because, you know, look, I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women get married, divorced, have kids, lose family, care for their elderly parents. That's what I love. Do you know? I love that. I love taking people through that and being that place of comfort. So, and my brands are an extension of that, absolutely.
Let's talk about that. Let's jump into that. Talking about all your various, you know, entrepreneurial encounters, pursuits. Tell us a little bit about, like we've just talked about the Upbeat, you know, and the Upbeat is your, do you call it a fitness center? It's a fitness studio?
I guess it's like a, boutique fitness center. I don't even know what it is. It's just a great place to hang out. I call it the Pink Palace.
The Pink Palace, I love it. It's on Bondi Road in Bondi. If anybody is in the eastern suburbs and doesn't know it, like next time you drive down Bondi Road, you just look for the Pink House. That's where Libby's. Right. And it does look like the funnest workout ever. And I remember you doing a story on Instagram at some point, and correct me if I remember that incorrectly, but you said that you've never actually even been for a run, or that you don't even really go for runs.
No, I don't.
But that you just, that's the workout you do, you love it because it's fun and it's energetic, but you don't feel like going for a run. And I remember listening to that and feeling such relief. I was like, oh, even Libby doesn't go for a run. That's great.
I love a walk.
Because I'm always like, oh, I should really start running again. And then you popped up going like, I've never been for a run. I'm like,
yes. Lots of walking, no running, or lots of dancing.
Same. I do lots of walking too. Yeah. But I haven't. I mean, this is embarrassing to admit, but I have not been to the Upbeat.
No, we'll get you there one day.
I haven't made it, but we should.
That's fine. Whatever you want to do.
That
as long
should
as
be
the goal.
Not the goal, like we shake hands the day
done.
after that I'm coming for a session. And then you've also started, like you've got Chief Bars, which is the
Chief Nutrition,
Chief Nutrition, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean
they're
Chief
delicious,
Bars, Chief Nutrition.
by the way. They're
so good, aren't they?
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, Chief is
See, I don't come to
amazing.
the exercise, but I eat
You eat
food.
the Chief Bars, that's fine. That's important too. Yeah, so we are chief.com's our website, and it is, I like to say that not for the fact I'm promoting my brand, but it is a game-changing food business, because it is, I mean, I am a product person at heart when it comes to, I'm a very detailed product person. Like, I don't want crap in it. There is not going to be anything in there that compromises that. Like, it is truly healthy, whole, real food, but it's packaged. You can chuck it in your bag. You can take it anywhere. You know, our collagen bars are the only thing I can eat before exercise, and they give you your, depending which one you choose, between 15 and 20 grams of protein and collagen. So your body's supported. Great for people trying to conceive. Great for mums who are breastfeeding, who need that kind of on-the-go, one-handed but nutritious snack. All the meat-based products and livers and all that stuff are great for people that have got low iron, which is almost every woman I know these days.
Yep.
You know, it's just one of those brands that came from a place of passion when I was a sleep-deprived, hungry mum who was struggling to build muscle, struggling to eat enough protein, struggling to get enough good nutrition. It came from that place of love. And now my husband is at the helm of it. It is, I mean, I'm still very much involved as a co-founder, but it has become a little bit of a scarily big business. For me, I'm a small business person. Like, I love those like small to medium business, or being on the product side of big businesses. So that's where I sit now. I've shifted more to product and creative, and Justin is at the helm of the operations. Yeah. And it's been an absolute joy, because the stories we get are just incredible, you know, and it's a brand that seems like outdoor, hikey, sporty, blokey in some ways, but actually our biggest clientele are women who need nourishing and need quick snacks and are busy, and that is such a joy to me. Yeah, you know, beautiful. So that's been good. And then Athletica.
Yeah, Athletica. So tell me about Athletica.
Yes, here we go. If you're seeing the video, this is my sustainable active line.
The video has actually, I think the SIM card has died already. That was not great.
It's dead.
Anyways,
well,
sorry.
No, we'll go again.
Sorry, no video this time again.
That's fine. That's actually good for me.
But so Athletica
then we can strip.
Yeah, now you can strip off.
So
Athletica is your newest venture, and you've co-founded it with Bronte Campbell, who is an Australian Olympic swimmer. Yes. So tell me about that venture and how that came about. And I mean, again, haven't gone to your gym yet, but eat your food and wear your clothes for my walks. I love 2 out of 3. I'm ticking off.
Hang on, what have you got on focus sets?
Yeah, I do, and they're so comfortable. But so tell me about your mission behind that, because that is obviously, I know how passionate you are about that business and how much that means to you as well.
I love it, and it's very much it's one of those places that's kind of, you know, I know how hard it is to build a product business. I did it with Chief. It took us 10 years to get profitable. Realistically, that is the product roadmap. You know, it's 5 years to get paid, 10 years to get profitable. And that's if it goes well. Like Chief did, luckily.
That's just the reality of it, right? That's what a lot of people don't realize when they start a business. They think it's just going to turn around really quickly. But no, there's a lot of blood, sweat and tears in there.
A lot of blood, sweat and tears. And there's a difference, like service businesses like the Upbeat, it's a lot of your personal energy and physical energy, but it's profitable straight away. People pay and they come. Whereas a product business is a completely different set of stresses, because you pay a huge amount of money for product and then you hope you can sell it. Yeah. And then you have to, once you do start selling it, your costs to create it become bigger. So you're constantly chasing that loop until you get clearly profitable. And for Chief, that was about the 10-year mark that happened. And Athletic is only a baby business. We've been selling for 2 years now, but I love it. And it has been a joyful business to run and ticked off so many creative, I don't know, spaces for me. You know, I didn't want to do it because I looked at it for about 5 or 6 years before I did it.
Was it your idea?
Myself and Chris, who's my co-founder, were the two that started it, and we brought Bronte in later. Although she's been an incredible asset and amazing to have on the journey. And now we're very much a tight threesome. Yeah. So, Chris is a lawyer, basically, and he really wanted to start a business. And it was a random meeting because he was like, you'd be a great person to start a business with, you've done it before. And I was like, what do you want to start? And he didn't really know, and I was like, well, let's talk later. But this had been on my mind for like 5 or 6 years. I'd been in this space wearing activewear every single day, becoming very aware that it was made from virgin plastics, and there was all this hoo-ha about plastic bags, plastic bottles, and yet we were wearing it every day and people were treating it like disposable fashion. All these brands coming in doing cheap virgin plastic gear that was like basically the amount of plastic waste generated by new virgin plastic activewear every year is like as much as 41,000 Eiffel Towers. Like, it's huge.
It's nuts, isn't it?
It's just a huge amount. And so I looked at it and went, is someone going to do something about this? And there were a couple of brands doing little bits and pieces of recycled stuff, but but also doing a whole bunch of virgin stuff around it.
Yeah.
And no one seemed to be progressing the industry, using new technology, using new fabrics, looking at fabric tech. And I was like, oh, someone should really do that, but I'm not touching it. No, we've got enough on. And then Chris came along and I said, oh, I do have this thought in my brain about this. And he was like, well, I want something in the fitness and health space. I've always wanted to do it in clothing, but I'm not creative like that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do this, but we talked about it for a good year before we decided to dive in. And finally I went, you know what? Let's go, because no one's still doing it. I'm 6 years later still talking about this.
Which is crazy, right? When you think about how many brands are out there doing activewear, doing that kind of work, and nobody's kind of really shifting the needle in a really meaningful way, you know, in the right direction. Like you said, bits and pieces, but then there's so much greenwashing around it still.
So much greenwashing. You know, the big brands will do one piece of recycled garment and then they'll sing about it in the rooftops while having this deep chain of all these thousands of SKUs made from virgin plastic and then chucking it out when it's not, you know, taken up. And it's really sad, but it's also not really their fault because they built in an environment that didn't have that information. And now they're just too far in to turn the big thing. I always say it's like the Titanic, you know, they built the Titanic, the iceberg's coming at them and they couldn't move. It's not because they couldn't see the iceberg, they just couldn't move the ship in time. However, we as a young, hungry brand can build that new agile ship from the ground up and go for it. So that's where the dream came from. And Bronte was special because she's an Olympian. Working with her has really opened my mind to what it takes to be an Olympian. Like her brain is like a sponge. The way she moves forward and takes on challenges is amazing to watch. So she is such a driver of that Titanic. I'm there putting the detail, building it on the back end with product. And Chris is a really good operational, you know, helping us get the investment, get the money, get the people on the right track to help us do it. So it's a...
Hopefully not a drive of the Titanic though.
No, that's right. The new agile ship, that's right. Thank you for that correction. The new Titanic, we'll call it. So it's been a really amazing journey for me. It's been so creative. It has been challenging because I've built this brand with tiny, you know, Harry was born in the very early stages of it. You know, Izzy was still only 3 at this point. So I had this 3-year-old and the 1-year-old, we're creating this brand new brand, trying to run a gym in a post-COVID environment, chiefs building up. So it has, like, not to make it all feel sunny, it's been a really challenging past 4 or 5 years because gyms took such a hit in COVID, and it has taken almost till the past year to get them back to where they're pumping. And even so, you know, with little kids, when do people want to train? Before school, after school, night times, weekends? So it's
just when you have your kids at home as well, right?
And it is a strain on the family, and so, you know, so is running these big product businesses that are growing. So it's not without a huge amount of challenge that I do what I do. It's not without, like, today, it's so funny. I said to you, oh my gosh, I'm running late. You know, these things come up in business that are so, they seem like such a small thing to you, but they might be a mountain to someone else. And then you have to figure out how to chip away at that mountain and make it a molehill again. You know, anytime someone has a personal issue that affects their work, that's on you. Anytime there's a product issue with the manufacturer, that's on you. Anytime an investor, you know, has an issue, that's on you. Even if it's their own personal issue, has nothing to do with an investment they've made. So you are at the helm of dealing with multiple issues all the time, as well as little children who need you all the time. So it's not been easy, but I still can't give any of it up.
I mean, it sounds amazing, and I love all the businesses that you're running, and like you said, it obviously doesn't come without challenges. You know, how do you overcome those challenges? What do you do? Where do you have the spare time, or what do you do for yourself where you go, like, this is actually what I'm doing in order to kind of keep sane within all of that, you know? Because and I'm sure there's amazing times and then there's challenging times, you know, like everything that kind of ebbs and flows in life. But how do you look after yourself?
It's a good question. And, you know, I'm a big believer that self-care isn't, you know, a massage and a facial and a holiday. It's all the stuff you do day to day that really is your self-care that keeps you sane. Like I said, you know, I've given up drinking for life because I need to have that clear head. I need to be in control. I always am in bed now with plenty of time, 8 hours ideally, but minimum 7 is my cutoff to make sure I get that good sleep. I regularly do, like, I'm putting my phone down for a day. I need 24 hours without looking at the problems of everyone else, because there is never a 24 hours that as a business owner, let alone a 3 business owner, you don't have everyone's problems coming in at you. And, you know, it's one of these things that you've just got to take control of and go, I can't actually control how everyone feels or what problems they've got going on, and I can't fix all of those all the time. So what I can do is make sure I'm in a good place. So putting the phone down is actually the biggest mental health hack of all time. Like, even if it's for 8 hours on a weekend, so you can fully tune in, not touch a screen unless it's a family movie. You know, that is one of my biggest things. Another thing is, I'm never without exercise. You know, I definitely have days in the week where I don't do it, where I rest my body, but there's not 2 days in a row where that happens. It's like, whether it's a walk or a gym session, doesn't have to be intense. Something that grounds you into your body is really, really important. For me, a huge self-care hack for me is reading. And I read things, you know, I know business owners are always like, oh, self-help, half an hour a day. F no for me. If I'm reading at nighttime, I'll read the self-help in the day, sure. But for me, I listen to that in podcasts when I'm out walking, I'm around. But as I'm winding down for the night, every single night, I read a book that's complete fiction. You know, it's either magic or it's detective work or it's fantasy or it's dragons or it's something that's nothing to do with everyday life.
Just to completely take you out of it, right?
Take me out of it. And stop my brain from thinking. So that's my wind down hack every night. You know, I'll put my babies to bed and then I'm there with my book and I'm reading it until I fall asleep, and I'm in a completely different imaginary creative headspace when I go to sleep. I always get up well before my children. Even on mornings I'm not with them, I make sure I have an hour where I get up, you know, I'll watch or listen to something I want to while I have a cup of tea and I get myself ready. And so when they get up, I'm put together. And so I can focus in on them, because if I'm messy and trying to get ready while I'm getting them ready, I don't feel good. They don't leave feeling good. The drop-offs are hard. So that's a big piece of self-care for me. Even if I'm tired, I'm like, they're going to get up at 6:30, so I'm up at 5:30 on a day off, and I'm completely put together. I've made the lunches and I'm there, and I can sit and read with them and draw with them and play cards with them. So when they leave me, their cup is full, and that allows me not to think about them for the day, which sounds funny, but it's like, I need to not
that they're safe and that they're good and that they are happy.
Yes, if I've had to rush and I'm like dragging 10 things at once, and I'm a late person generally too. So this is why I have to do this. I need that space for self where I can just hone in on them and get them out the door. Because if they leave me screaming again, I'm going to be thinking about them all day. I can't, you know, and likewise in my business, I'm not the kind of manager where if a staff member feels slightly off, even if it's a personal feeling off, or if a client has an issue and they need me to address it, I can't be like, I'll deal with that tomorrow. Like, it is right there, right then. I can't do anything else until that is resolved. So in some ways that makes it harder for me a little bit. I can't compartmentalize those emotional elements, but it does, I think, make it easier for the people that I'm engaging with, because issues are dealt with and we move past them immediately. It doesn't even have to be my issue. It could be their issue, but they need someone to talk to about it, and I can feel that. So that for me is even in my self-care. Like, if there's an issue in front of it, deal with it, move on from it, put it behind you. Because if you carry these things on and on, like, you're just wasting energy. And there's no time for that as a business owner or a mom and a fitness person. There's no time for that. So they're all things that I think are true self-care. Deal with issues as they come up. Be authentic. There's nothing I hate more than passive aggression or putting issues off or not addressing something. You know, and for that reason, you know, I can feel like a very straight up person. You know, if I'm in a meeting and someone's saying they like something but I feel like they're not, I'll say, you don't like it. And they'll be like, no. I'm like, no, you don't like it. Tell me. Let's talk about it. We need to, I don't want to get off the phone and feel like you didn't like it, but you're telling me you like it. So I'm a very straight up kind of person, so that I don't have to carry those issues with me. And they're not there with me when I pick my kids up. And my kids aren't with me when I'm making business decisions, because it's dealt with. So
I love that. I love that.
Things.
And it's interesting because looking at your human design again, so you've got the root center defined and the sacral defined. So the sacral is that life energy, you know, having like lots of energy, like consistent energy. And then having the root center defined means that you're really good at dealing with pressure. you know, which you obviously have to be in your role, right? Running 3 businesses, running a family, doing all of that. Things come up and you're really good at actually dealing with it and, you know, not getting overwhelmed by it, because it's your own energy. It's your constant energy, you know, so you're really good with doing that. And it's almost like you're almost like thriving a little bit on pressure, you know. It's like
I've always liked pressure.
You like it, you know. Exactly.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. No, I love that. And so when we're talking about the businesses, you know, and like running all those different businesses that you do, and I love how they're all an extension of each other, how you so beautifully put it, because it's true, right? They're all in the same field.
Yes.
What would you say to somebody who is looking at starting a business, you know?
Yeah.
And what would your advice be? Like, what's your top 3 things that are really important to think about when you're starting a business? I'm just asking for a friend over here.
Yeah, over here, that's right. No, you know, like I'm really clear on this. I think unless you are an experienced business person or you have someone you really trust who's an experienced business person, start with the least risky thing you can to learn about business. You know, for me, when I went into business to start with, I remember thinking, I know nothing about this, so I need the least risky situation. Now, for me, my first business was going to be in fitness. I wanted nothing more than a studio. But my first step, I was like, I need room to fail and learn. So I did a boot camp where I had to pay for a council license. I could start with myself, a pair of dumbbells and a kettlebell, and offer people to come to me for free. And, you know, I did that for about a month. I started to build up and got used to that. And then slowly I'd employed a few contractors. Eventually that went into some actual staff. By then I'd figured out, you know, how to kind of manage people. But when they were sort of contracting, and then it's another level when you actually employ people or have them longer term. I started to figure out taxes, how to work with accountants, what parts I was good at, not so good at, and slowly worked up to that. My next step was actually buying a business that someone else was failing at and that I knew I could do better at. But they'd put the system, they'd built the studio.
So it was a fitness studio.
It was a fitness studio, not the one I have currently. It was another fitness studio, but the equipment was there. They'd set up the studio. The DA, which is what you sign with the council, had been approved. It was transferring ownership and then learning to run that database, that customer base, market the business, sales, get people in, you know, the accounting on a bit of a bigger scale. And from there, once I had the audience, people knew me from my boot camps, they knew me from the studio. I had an audience for a product that I wanted to create. The next business was Chief. Then came that business. And again, we have so many products now. We started with just one product, run as a side business, learning product with minimal spend, with one basic product. How do people engage? What do we need to know about packaging and food production? Slowly scaling that up. And then Earthletica, which is a bit more of a complex business because again, you're fitting on with people's bodies. It's not just one product fits all, anyone can eat it. It's different shapes, sizes. I know how to negotiate now. I know how to sell a product now. I've got an even bigger audience across numerous businesses. Actually, that wasn't my next one. My next one was the Upbeat. So my own like Joy Studio. I sold the other one. And actually I sold the other one to get into what I wanted to do now. To create a studio that was set up the way I wanted it to be set up. So smallest business, next setup, bought someone that someone had existing, built on that, sold that, built my own dream studio, built that up, couple of audiences, product, and then second product. So for me, I've done a lot of learning. I still don't know everything. There's still things daily that, you know, we had to do our first product recall for Chief recently, which was a whole learning curve for us, very costly learning curve, but it's another string on your bow. And I think like, this is the thing about learning and building up slowly is that when you first start a business, everything feels like a complete disaster if it goes wrong. So, you know, one client does a bad review and it feels like your whole world's crumbling in. You know, one trainer doesn't show up and it's like, my God, I've let all these people down. You know, you get a bad tax bill and you're like, oh, I'm never going to pay it back. But as you become more experienced as a business person, you start to learn to dance with these dramas that come in. And now I receive them as, what's the problem? How can we solve it? Let's do it. And now that they're bigger problems, it's like a kid. Little kid, you start with a baby because little kid, little problems. And you learn as you go and you learn how to not lose your own temper and you learn how to manage their behaviors and their emotions and talk them through things. And, you know, you learn about them and you learn about you know, how they deal with things and how you can support that. And then they become a teenager where it's big kid, big problem, and you yourself have leveled up. And that is like business.
Yeah.
So start with the baby.
And I love that. And the two things that come to mind is like the first one is, you know, there are no problems, they're just opportunities.
Yes, 100%.
Because everything is an opportunity, you know, if you look at it, it's like an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow. And the second thing is the thing that a lot of entrepreneurs say, you know, and I love when you're talking about that as well, is learn fast, fail fast, you know.
Yes,
you just
100%.
have to fail, because people that are scared of failing are never going to grow, and they're never going to get somewhere, because if you always play it safe, and if you never risk something, if you never try put something out there, failure is just a natural part of the process, and it is seen as an opportunity 100%. In the long run, I think, you know.
It is, and it's very much, again, like the parallels with parenting are wild.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the kids at school and they're like, she did it better than me. I didn't get it. I didn't get to take my name off the chart. I didn't learn that part. And you're like, that's
so
fine.
bad at this.
Like, I'm so bad at this. And it's, you teach them all the time. Like, failing's awesome. Failing's one step closer to getting it right. And, you know, there's always going to be people better than you and people worse than you. In business, that's 100% true. Yeah. There's always going to be bigger brands. You know, here we are as Baby Athletica when there's like the Lululemons of the world and, you know, doing these huge things. And you can't compare yourself. Like, we're here and we're learning, you know. It's like when kids get upset that their friends turn 6 and they haven't turned 6 yet. You know, it's like, well, you just haven't turned 6 yet. So the parallels are huge. Like, it's learn fast, fail fast. And you can only do that. You know, as much as I love risk, I don't love big risk when you're not ready for it. I think that is where you can destroy, you know, everything you're dreaming of. So I like little risk, then build. And when by the time you get to the big risk, you've got all these coping mechanisms in place to be able to deal with it. And I also am hyper aware now of what my strengths and weaknesses are in business. I know what I'm not good at. And the number one thing I'm not good at, to be honest, is the sitting at a desk. And doing the admin. Like, if you're going to ask me to be on top of every email coming in from important people, that is not me. So I always partner with people that love being at a desk, communicating with people, getting back to people, locking in meetings. And then they bring me to the meeting and I will wow whoever it is. That's great. And I'll be their friend probably afterwards. But I'm not going to be there for the 20 conversations on email that go before that. Or, you know, for me, a financial plan is like, let's look at the big rocks. Here are the big things we have to achieve at this point. Let's backstack it. So it means we need approximately this now. Let's go. But to put that in a tight Excel document with multiple pieces of detail is not me. So
just knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, right? And where you need support and bringing those people in to help you on that journey.
And that's not always what you like or dislike. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't actually like managing people because, you know, I take on everyone's emotions. I don't like it, but I'm very good at it. So I will always do that firsthand. Like, I don't like anyone else touching my staff. I don't like it because I care about them more than anyone else. I care about how well they are emotionally, physically, how well their family is. And I think if you care about people more than you care about their job, they will do a better job. So you know, if an issue comes up, I'm the best person to manage that with them 100% because I will be like, talk to me about you. What's going on behind what's coming up? And I can diffuse a situation. Whereas other members of my team that maybe are exceptional at the admin work and exceptional at the detail, and they might not be as great with that. So, you know, it's not doing everything you just like, but it's doing the things that you can contribute the most in. You know?
And I loved when you were talking about, you know, as an example, as an Athletica, you're not a Lululemon yet, but I think there's also that thing about not comparing yourself to the other things that are out there and just kind of authentically following your path. Because if you wouldn't want to start something that somebody else has already done, you couldn't really do anything anymore. Because like, 100%. Yes, fitness studios exist, yes, food exists, like bars exist, and like clothes exist. I mean, yes, you do it in a different way, but at the end of the day, you know, you couldn't start. Because some people go like, oh, but why do you want to do this? There's so many already. I'm like, yeah, but there's so many of everything, you know.
Every career I've ever chosen, everyone has told me there's too many of those. And yet every career I've had, I've been successful in it because nobody brings what you'll bring.
Exactly.
And I think, and this is a thing, like, I can look at the huge activewear businesses, and although it would be nice to be able to have that much impact one day, like, be big enough in the sustainability and tech forward space that people are wanting Earthletica only because they know it's doing better for the planet. They know our fabric tech is incredible and we're creating for the next generation of people who want us to do better.
Yeah.
But if I think about any of the existing big activewear brands, I would not want to own them because my conscience with all that virgin plastic is, it's just not what I want on my own conscience. So I wouldn't want to own them anyway.
It's not what you want your legacy to be, right?
I want to build my own way. Same with the brands. Like, give me the top selling brand in the world and I guarantee you I don't want to eat the ingredients in it. And therefore I don't want my community eating the ingredients in it. So same with fitness. I've owned a fitness business before that was great fun and it really worked for men. It was a mixed business. My only fitness business that was mixed. It was a super athletic concept. But if I was completely honest with myself, the young women in that community would get obsessed because it was fun, but they would start to lose their cycles. It was too much. It was disrupting hormones. And I couldn't see it. So I started my own business where women can train as hard as they want, as often as they want, but the training is designed to support the female body and female hormones. And I never had that issue again. So for me, it has to sit well with my conscience and with my heart. It has to be that big sister brand that's looking after the people that are trusting it. That's always been my favorite role, and it continues to be so.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, going back to that, what you just said again, and you've mentioned it before, you're very targeted, just training women, and, working with women. Why are you so passionate about supporting women on their journeys?
Yes, I love women. I will almost cry every time someone brings this up. And everything I do, I have really creative women. No offense, men. Like, I love the men too, but I just think women have so many challenges that I am super familiar with. There are so many changes to our bodies, to our hormones, to the person we have to be and become in our life. Like, for men, the trajectory generally is pretty standard. They're easy to train. They can do whatever they want with food. It doesn't really affect their body or their hormones too much. They don't really pay the baby tax in their careers, no offense. I always thought that, it would be, these day and age, it would be very 50-50. But as I've discovered, I have a super supportive husband who wants to be involved. But the baby tax is still very much on the lady. And I say that with confidence. I don't care who wants to argue with me. Not because the men don't want to help, but the kids, when they're young, they need your boobs, They need their mum. We are the primary attachment. And that lasts for a very long time. And there's something in you that shifts when you have that baby for most women that makes you want to be that person. When my kids finish school, they want to be with me. They want to unload on me. I am their safe place where they can, I can pick up my kid crying and they want to tell mum about it. And then they stabilize and they're so ready for the fun of dad when he comes home. And that's a totally different role, but it's different. If I'm away, it is destabilizing in some way. So, there's this whole journey for women. Our hormones change, our bodies change all the time. We're maturing into a body. And that's not where it stops. Then we're having babies, then we're postnatal, then we're doing perimenopause. And we're the ones typically that will care for our older parents. Like it's a whole life of different roles. And so in my opinion, even when couples split up, it is usually the mum figuring out the kids. Like I can only say this from experience. I've worked with thousands of women at this point. And I've seen it again and again. And I like to be the person that is there to be a stable place for those women through all these points of contact, to create a safe space for them to come with their postnatal bodies that feels completely different to what it used to, that might be 5 sizes bigger than it was. And to be like, I'm so glad you're here and it's normal and it's okay and you don't have to ever feel self-conscious here. I'm never going to take a photo of you. I'm like, I just want you to be here.
It's that understanding and that compassion, right? 100%. That you can give being a woman, that you can give to other women that like a man just couldn't grasp in the same way.
It's
not because they don't want to, but
it's just different. In the same way as if I was a man, I might want to support men going through the same things as me. I have just always loved working with women and I love the complexity of it. I don't love the simplicity of being a trainer to men. I'm like, great, I give you a chest exercise, a back exercise, a squat and a lunge and we're done and that's what you need from me. And from doing that workout, that's enough. Anyone can do that in my opinion. for me, I love the complexity of the women, the way their bodies change, the way their emotions change. The cyclic beings, the way it's different every week of the month. You know, I myself, which is something we haven't talked about, after Harry, I have a very painful endometriosis and adenomyosis situation going on. So now, although I hate that, I certainly have this new level of understanding now for women that have dealt with that their whole lives. I never dealt with it till after Harry. And it's another level again of extreme pain at a lot of parts of the month. And now I'm like, oh, I see now what you're dealing with. And now how can we work with that together? I love the complexity of it. I love the way women support each other. I love that if I change what a woman knows about food, if I change the way they feel about their body, their whole family will change because they usually will drive the food, the movement, the social engagements with their family. So I love being able to affect the change maker, you know?
Yeah.
I love that. So
I love that so much, Libby. I love your work, honestly.
Probably said too much then. Sorry, man, I do love you too, but in a different way.
No, honestly, I think that was so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I would want to keep talking to you, but I think we both have to go and get our children.
Yes, we do, exactly. It's 2:45 now, school pickup time.
We will have to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So, Libby, the 3 main pearls of wisdom that came out of our conversation today, besides all your other wisdom that you've shared with us, is the first one, you know, talking about the hypertension that you've been diagnosed with and the fertility issues that you've struggled through because of that, but then being able to heal your body, first through some medication because it was necessary, but then really looking at, you know, exercise and nutrition and doing all the right things and really giving your body the best chance to heal itself. I think that's a really beautiful message, that if you do the right things, you know, your body has an amazing ability to heal itself. And why would you not want to give it the best possible chance to do so, you know?
That's right.
So your body kind of always knows best. Then the second pearl of wisdom was, you know, asking you about what you do for your mental health, you know, and what you do in order to kind of balance your work and your life and everything. You said that it's not so much about going on a holiday or going on a retreat or something. It's really the everyday things that you do, you know. It's like putting your phone down for 24 hours, exercising, reading some fiction to completely get you out of, you know, what's been going on in your day. And, you know, also dealing with issues as they come up and not letting them get away. Yeah, exactly. So I really like that. And then the third thing, you know, as an entrepreneur and multiple business owner, you know, you talked about you start with something easy, start with something small and kind of grow into that role. You know, don't bite off more than you can chew to start off with, because you don't want to fail, you know, you want to make things successful and just kind of start and test it out. Yeah. So, thank you so much.
Summarised well.
So
lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. Libby, before I let you go though, tell people, you know, where can they find you? How can they get in touch with you? How can they work with you on all your different...
Of course. Look, probably the easiest thing is just to say my Instagram page is where links to all of my businesses live, whether it's the food, the activewear, the gym, or our retreats. So at Libby Babet, which is spelled Babe with a T.
I love that.
Just in case anyone's struggling with that. And
we'll also put it in the show notes so people can find it. But I do love that explanation.
Or more formal, libbybabet.com will lead you off to all my sites as well. But yeah, definitely link up. Like, there's nothing more I love than growing our communities and chatting to people and helping out. So yeah, follow and stay in touch, and yeah, anything new I'm doing will pop up there, and just keep living well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation today. It was an absolute pleasure having you here.
And
yeah,
we did it.
I know, we did it.
After about third time lucky.
This now?
That's right.
That's amazing.
Yes, if we didn't hit record, we're in trouble.
Oh my God, we did. It's
good.
Recording. Amazing. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. I really hope you got something out of our conversation today. Libby really took us deep into, you know, her life journey and like what it was for her to start the businesses. Now she's a multiple business owner and entrepreneur, 2 beautiful children, and she kind of took us behind the scenes of what her life looks like and how she is juggling everything on a day-to-day basis. Please do share the podcast with your family, your friends, or anyone that you think might be interested in some of those insights. Someone who might be wanting to go to the gym, eat some healthy snacks, wear some sustainable active wear. You know where to find it now. I really hope this episode brought some sunshine to your soul. I'm sending love and light your way, and until next time.